Cold air hangs heavy in the dim parking garage. Ryan Carter's footsteps echo against the concrete as he strides toward his black luxury sedan, suit jacket still sharp from a boardroom battle that stretched 12 hours. Tomorrow is the day. A $400 million merger that will lock his name into corporate history. His mind is already drafting victory speeches when the door lock clicks beneath his hand. Sliding into the driver's seat, he exhales. Then, a voice. Soft. Urgent. Chill. They can hear us. Ryan's head snaps toward the shadowed back seat. A small figure curls tight against the leather. A girl, maybe 7, eyes wide and unblinking. Dust smudges her cheek. She hugs her knees like they're the only safe thing left in the world. They. Ryan's voice is low. Her reply lands like a stone in his chest. Your friend Ethan and the blonde lady. They're not your friends. They're going to steal your company. Ryan studies her, searching for the punchline. But the fear in her voice is too steady, too real. How do you know that? The girl glances toward the garage entrance as if expecting someone to appear. Her next words are barely a whisper. Because I heard them, and I know where they hide the proof. The silence stretches. Ryan's fingers tighten on the steering wheel, the hum of fluorescent lights above the only sound a stranger in his car. A warning he can't ignore, and a question that could cost him everything. Who exactly is this little girl? Ryan Carter was not born into wealth. He was 13 when his parents were killed in a freeway accident, and 17 when he left the foster system with a second-hand laptop and a stubborn refusal to quit. By 30, he had turned a line of code written in his apartment into a billion-dollar tech empire. That history bred loyalty, the kind that made betrayal feel unthinkable. The girl in his back seat had not said much since the parking garage. Now, under the glow of a roadside diner sign, she sat across from him, small hands cupped around a steaming mug of cocoa. Her name, she said, was Chloe Parker. She spoke with a composure far older than 7 years. Between sips, she explained where she had heard the warning. 2 nights earlier, she had been near the underground parking at Ethan Brooks's condo, Ryan's business partner for over a decade. Vanessa Grant, the company's CFO and Ethan's constant shadow, had been there too. They were laughing, Chloe said quietly. They said after tomorrow, you would be gone. They said they would clean you out, and no one would believe you. Ryan felt the sting of those words, but habit told him to dismiss them. Ethan had been with him since the early days. Vanessa had steered the company through brutal market crashes. Betrayal did not fit the picture. Then Chloe mentioned Ethan's custom silver cufflinks, the ones engraved with a Latin phrase known only to their inner circle. She described the scent of Vanessa's perfume, a rare French blend Ryan had personally seen her wear. These were not the guesses of a child. The waitress set down plates, and Chloe attacked the food like she had not eaten a real meal in days. She avoided Ryan's eyes when he asked about her parents. Instead, she spoke of her grandmother, Margaret, who worked nights cleaning offices in a downtown building. Sometimes she brings me, Chloe admitted. If it's late, I wait in the supply closet. I like to listen. Ethan and Vanessa go there. After hours, they think no one can hear them. Ryan leaned back, the weight of the information pressing in. Chloe's story was too specific to ignore and too dangerous to leave unchecked. The merger was hours away. If she was telling the truth, the company he built could be gone by tomorrow night. Outside, rain began to streak the diner windows. Ryan's phone buzzed with a message from Ethan. Early breakfast before the big day? A friendly gesture on the surface. Now, it felt like a trap. Across the booth, Chloe was busy wrapping half her sandwich in a napkin for later. She looked up at him then, her voice steady. They think you are too smart to suspect them. That is why it will work. Ryan studied her for a long moment, measuring the strange mix of innocence and certainty in her gaze. This was not a coincidence. Whatever had brought her into his car tonight was connected to a much larger storm. And storms, Ryan knew, had to be faced head-on. Ryan didn't sleep much that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Ethan's smug smile and Vanessa's perfect, cold expression. They thought they'd already won, but they were forgetting something. Ryan wasn't the same man he used to be, and he knew people at 6 a.m. He picked up his phone and scrolled through old contacts until he found one name, Jack Reynolds, a retired federal investigator turned private PI. Jack had helped Ryan once before, years ago, when a business partner tried to frame him for tax fraud. Ryan had cleared Jack's niece's debts in return. That was the kind of favor that didn't fade with time. The call was short. Jack, I need you to dig into Ethan Mercer and Vanessa Lane. I don't care how deep you have to go, and I need it fast. Jack's voice was steady, almost amused. Guessing this isn't for a wedding invitation. Ryan didn't answer. He didn't have to be why the next evening. Jack called back, voice lower this time. I think you're going to want to sit down. Ryan sat at his kitchen counter, coffee untouched, as Jack laid it all out. Over the last 4 months, Ethan and Vanessa had been moving massive amounts of money, not into investments, but out a series of wire transfers totaling $5.30 million. Every payment went to a different shell company that no employees, no offices, just paper fronts designed to hide where the money was going. Ryan leaned back, rubbing his jaw. Could be bribes, or something dirtier, Jack said, and I think I found a link. That's when Chloe, who had been listening from the kitchen doorway, spoke up. I think I know someone. I mean, Vanessa meets with a man sometimes. Big guy, buzz cut, always wearing a dark coat. She calls him Oscar. Jack didn't miss a beat. Oscar Vega? He started typing fast on his laptop. Yeah, here he is. Connected to a money laundering network we've been tracking for years. Usually works as a courier, moves cash in bulk, hand-delivered in envelopes or bags. Chloe's eyes widened. Envelopes. Yes, that's exactly what I saw. Ryan's stomach tightened. IT was all starting to fit together. Jack went on. And this so-called merger Ethan's pushing? Looks like it's not about combining companies. It's about using your company's clean record to move funds across borders without detection. Once Ethan's in charge, they'll run everything through your accounts. By the time anyone catches on, the trail will point back to you. Ryan went cold. That IT wasn't just about losing his company anymore. If Ethan pulled this off, Ryan wouldn't just be bankrupt. He'd be facing federal charges. That he glanced at Chloe, who was hugging her arms tightly. If she hadn't noticed Oscar, if she hadn't spoken up, he didn't even want to think about it. Jack cleared his throat. What do you want me to do next? Ryan looked down at his coffee, still untouched, and a slow, sharp determination settled over him. They think I'm blind. That's good. Let them think that. He leaned forward, voice steady. I'm going to let Ethan believe his plan is working. I'll play along. I'll give him just enough rope to hang himself. Jack's tone carried a trace of a grin. That's the Ryan I remember. After the call ended, Ryan turned to Chloe. This isn't just about business anymore. They're criminals, and if they succeed, they'll take me down with them. But we're not going to let that happen. For the first time in days, Chloe saw something in Ryan's eyes she hadn't seen before. Control. That he wasn't reacting anymore, he was planning. And when Ryan planned, people like Ethan Mercer didn't just lose, they didn't recover. Ryan walked into the glass-walled conference room with the calm of a man reading tomorrow's headlines today. Ethan was already there, sleeves rolled up, flashing his easy grin at Vanessa. They spoke in the hushed tones of people who wanted others to lean in to hear. Ryan didn't. He simply took his seat, laid out his notes, and let the silence press them into speaking first. Glad you could make it, Ethan said smoothly, as if the last week hadn't been a game of corporate guerrilla warfare. We've been mapping out the post-merger structure. Ryan smiled faintly. Post-merger. As though the ink was dry. As though he'd already agreed to play the role they'd cast for him. Asterisk. The rest of the meeting played out like a chessboard. Every comment Ryan made seemed harmless, yet each one concealed a move. A subtle shift of position, a quiet nudge that forced Ethan to commit too soon, or Vanessa to overplay her hand. When it was over, Ethan walked out with 2 shareholders in tow, his voice low but animated. Ryan lingered, eyes following. He recognized the tactic instantly, soft-selling his worth to the very people who held the swing votes. Meanwhile, Jack was in the shadows, literally. To Ethan's office lights burned late into the night, but Jack knew the blind spots in the security system. He moved with the patience of a man threading a needle in a windstorm. Planting 2 micro-recorders under the desk and behind the bookshelf where Ethan liked to stand when making confidential calls. Chloe had been the one to make it possible. She had walked that floor for years delivering documents and coffee. She knew which hallway cameras lagged by 3 seconds, which motion sensors were faulty. Over a quiet dinner in the corner booth of a 24-hour diner, She'd drawn the floor plan from memory. No hesitation, no second guesses. Ryan had been there, watching her work. When she finally slid the napkin across the table, she asked casually, "You have any family?" He'd considered lying. It was safer that way. But something about her eyes, the way they held both challenge and understanding, made him answer honestly. "No," he said. "Not anymore." Chloe's mouth curved into a small, wry smile. "Me too," she said softly. And for a moment, the war they were fighting faded into something quieter, more human. 3 days later, Jack called Ryan in the middle of the night. "You'll want to hear this," he said. The audio file was grainy but clear enough to turn the stomach. Ethan's voice was unmistakable. "After the merger, he's done. We'll bury him legally, tie him up in so many lawsuits he'll have nothing left to fight with." Vanessa's laugh followed, smooth and deliberate. "He won't see it coming." Ryan listened to it twice. By the third time, he wasn't angry, not exactly. What he felt was colder, sharper. This wasn't just about his company anymore. This was about the deliberate dismantling of everything he'd built and the casual cruelty of people who saw that as sport. Jack had already sent the files to a federal contact. The response came within hours. The recordings were damning, but not enough. They needed a public moment, a confrontation that would strip away any plausible deniability and force Ethan and Vanessa to incriminate themselves in real time. Ryan closed the message and leaned back in his chair. The city lights spilling across his desk, he thought of Ethan's smug confidence, Vanessa's calculated smirk, the way they'd underestimated him from the start. If they wanted a stage, he'd give them one. But this time, the spotlight wouldn't burn him, it would burn them. The day of the merger signing arrived like a storm no one could see coming. The conference room at Sterling Heights Tower gleamed with gold trim, polished wood, and a table long enough to seat a dozen power players. At the head sat Ethan, smiling like a man who'd already won. Beside him, Vanessa leaned back in her chair, her designer pen spinning lazily between her fingers. Across from them, the board members and lawyers shuffled papers, whispering about the deal's size. They to the far end of the table. Ryan sat straight-backed, calm but unreadable. No one noticed the way his fingers tapped against the folder in front of him, or the slight nod he gave Jack, who stood quietly by the projector. "Let's get this over with," Ethan said, glancing at his watch. "The faster we sign, the faster we all get paid." Ryan leaned forward. "Before we proceed," his voice was calm, but it cut through the room like a blade. "There are a few things that came to light." The room stilled. Ethan's smirk wavered. Ryan turned his head toward Jack. "Go ahead." Jack tapped a button on his tablet, and suddenly, a voice filled the room. Ethan's voice, clear and unmistakable. "Once the merger is final, we'll push Ryan out. Vanessa, you'll take over operations, and I'll redirect the funds before anyone catches on." The recording went on, Vanessa's voice chiming in with cold precision. He'll never see it coming. By the time he realizes, the money will be gone. A few board members exchanged stunned looks. One man removed his glasses, rubbing his eyes as if the sound alone burned them. "Where did you get this?" Ethan demanded, his voice sharper now. Ryan didn't answer. Jack simply tapped again, and the big screen on the wall lit up. Bank statements, wire transfers, and offshore accounts scrolled into view, each one bearing Ethan's and Vanessa's names. The numbers told a story even the boldest liar couldn't twist. Millions had been siphoned from company funds over the last year. Vanessa's chair scraped loudly against the marble floor as she stood. "This is ridiculous. None of this proves." The double doors at the far end of the room swung open with force. 4 men in dark suits stepped in, followed by 2 uniformed federal agents. And then came the smallest figure in the room, Chloe. Her steps were quick, determined. At her side was Margaret, her grandmother, who clutched a worn purse and kept her eyes on Ethan. Chloe stopped just inside the doorway, her chin raised. "That's him," she said, pointing straight at Ethan. "He's the one who told her to hide the papers." The air thickened. One of the agents stepped forward. "Ethan Stone, Vanessa Pierce, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and embezzlement." Gasps rippled through the room. Vanessa's face drained of color. Ethan tried to speak, but the click of handcuffs cut off whatever excuse he was scrambling to form. The agents guided them toward the door, their protests echoing uselessly. The room was silent except for the fading footsteps and the soft rustle of papers left and signed. Ryan rose to his feet, his eyes following Chloe. He walked toward her, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "You did more than you know," he said. "Without you, this never would have come together." Chloe's shoulders lifted in a small shrug, but there was a faint smile tugging at her lips. "I just told the truth." Margaret placed a hand on her granddaughter's back, pride shining in her eyes. Across the room, the board members sat frozen, still absorbing what had just happened. The merger papers lay untouched, the pen resting quietly beside them. The deal was over, and so was Ethan's empire. Ryan glanced around once more, letting the silence speak for itself. The storm had broken, and everyone in that room knew exactly who had brought the lightning. The chaos was over. Ethan's schemes had collapsed. Vanessa's arrogance had crumbled. And for the first time in years, Ryan Carter's company wasn't just stable, it was thriving. The turnaround was staggering. Within 12 months, revenue had jumped 40%. Employees no longer walked on eggshells. The halls that once echoed with whispers now hummed with collaboration. Deals that Ethan would have sabotaged were closing. Investors who had hesitated were back, this time with stronger commitments. But while Ryan was proud of the company's rise, there was one victory that mattered more than any balance sheet. One evening, after dinner, Chloe's grandmother asked to speak with him privately. She was a quiet woman, the kind whose eyes carried a weight of untold stories. "Ryan," she began softly, "there's something you should know. Something I should have told you months ago." He leaned forward, sensing the gravity in her tone. She told him the truth, that Margaret Carter, his late aunt, a woman he barely remembered from faded photographs, had once been close to Chloe's family. Before a bitter family disagreement decades ago, Margaret had promised to watch over them. But when she passed away, the connection was lost, until now. It hit Ryan like a slow, dawning sunrise. Chloe wasn't just a child he'd helped. She was family. He thought back to the first time he met her. The shy glance, the hesitant thank you, the quiet resilience in her small frame. And now, realizing she carried his bloodline, the bond felt even deeper. He didn't hesitate. Within weeks, Ryan began the process to adopt her, not as an act of charity, but as a promise. She would never have to fear instability again. The day the court approved the adoption, Chloe clung to him so tightly it felt like she was trying to make up for every moment life had kept them apart. But Ryan didn't stop there. He knew there were countless other Chloes out there, children one crisis away from losing everything. So he created the Carter Scholars Program, a fully funded initiative providing education, housing support, and mentorship for 200 vulnerable children every year. The first scholarship ceremony was held in the company's Grand Hall, the very space where, months before, boardroom battles had raged, now echoed with laughter and hope. Ryan stood on stage beside Chloe, handing out awards to bright-eyed students whose futures were finally within reach. When the last recipient walked off stage, Chloe slipped her hand into his and whispered, "Thank you for giving them what you gave me." Ryan glanced around the room, at his team, at the children, at the family he never expected to have, and realized something profound. This wasn't just a resolution. It was a transformation. The man who had once fought tooth and nail just to survive in business had built something far greater than profit. He had created legacy. And as the lights dimmed on the ceremony, Ryan knew this was only the beginning. 5 years had a way of softening sharp edges, turning pain into something that almost looked like wisdom. The Carter Hall auditorium was filled. Wall to wall, a golden banner stretched across the stage. The Carter Scholars Annual Ceremony. Cameras flashed. The hum of quiet chatter filled the air until a spotlight hit center stage. Chloe stepped forward. No longer the timid teenager who once hid behind folded arms, she now carried herself with a quiet strength. Her voice was steady, her smile unshaken. From the front row, Ryan watched. He wore no corporate suit today, just a simple navy jacket, hands resting together, eyes locked on her like nothing else in the world existed. Chloe took a deep breath before speaking into the microphone. 5 years ago, I thought my life was over. I thought being powerless meant I had nothing left to give. But someone showed me that sometimes the smallest voice can be the loudest truth. The crowd leaned in. She glanced toward Ryan. They taught me that kindness isn't weakness. It's armor. And those who think you're small," she paused, letting the silence build, "are the ones who fall the hardest." The audience erupted in applause. Some stood, clapping until the sound echoed off the high ceiling. Ryan's eyes glistened, though he quickly blinked it away. Chloe closed her speech with a smile that reached all the way to her eyes. "This program isn't just for scholars. It's for fighters, for believers, for every kid who's been told they're not enough, because they are." She stepped down from the podium, and Ryan stood to meet her. Without words, he took her hand. They walked side by side toward the exit, the applause still following them like a warm tide. The camera of the mind's eye lingered for one last moment. Two figures silhouetted against the golden light of the doors. No blood ties, no shared last name, just family.